How old is 15 really? Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I'm not saying that a person is as smart as they're going to be at 15. That's not what I'm saying, man. But I am saying 15.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Man Cave. We are Ryan, Corey, and Hampton. You are listening to the Much About Nothing podcast, the show where we give expert takes, good-hearted debates. We talk ball and anything and everything else. And today is an anything and everything else episode. We will be talking the juvenile justice system. Is 15? How old is 15? If you are new to the pod, greetings. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, smash that bell. If you're already part of the fam, welcome back. Please like, share, comment. I hope you enjoy the episode. Let's get straight into it. What you got, Cora?
Yes. Like you heard already, the name of the show is How Old is 15 Really? Can we really ask ourselves that? Is 15 what we think it is? How old is 15 to make decisions of life? So we're going to kick this thing off and start talking with raise the age laws. You want to break it down? You want me?
Go ahead, break it down.
All right. So in the state of New York, there's a law called Raise the Age Laws. It's where it raises the laws that 15, 16, and 17-year-old, these are the ages that cannot be prosecuted as adults. It stop usually typically if you do a crime at 15, 16, and 17, depending on that crime and the violent nature of that crime, you can be up to a violent offender and get charged as an adult. New York has done away with it. And the reason why we bring that up, because a lot of states are adopting this thing. And we want to get opinions of you in the chat and give our opinions on that. What do we think of that? And I guess it'll start off with Sumlin. Sumlin, what's your thoughts on it?
Man, so doing the research I did on it, it looks like it's only three states that don't have raised the age laws: Georgia, Wisconsin, and Texas.
Hmm.
They have a cutoff that's at 16, and Wisconsin is 18.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I start off directly with Todd comment, man. 15 is old enough to know right from wrong, for sure. Um, I understand the love a child, treat a child, but I do believe that there's a very fine line between accountability and grace when it comes to this particular age group. Um, and I think it all depends on what exactly they are participating in, right? How old is 15 anyway comes down to, well, how old have their parents decided 15 is,
Hmm.
and that's kind of that's where I'm at, right? That's kind of my take on that.
Yes. I'm kind of stuck in between on this thing. I'm very stuck in between. As y'all know, I'm a youth pastor. So I do some work, small work, not on the scale Hemp is. That's why I'm gonna lean to Hemp. That's one thing we can all do is lean to the expert, the people that have dealt with this and know more than you. I'm comfortable saying I might not know it all, even though I act like I do sometimes. But yes, I don't know it all, but I do have a heart for the youth. So it's kind of hard for me to see a 15-year-old other than just a 15-year-old. I see a child when I look at that 15-year-old, and most time I see myself. I made plenty of mistakes. I think I got my first charge soon as I turned 18. I got an assault charge, and then right after that, I got a DUI. And it snowballed down here from there. And I know that it's plenty of times we make mistakes, but at the same time, I'm an individual that believes in responsibility and accountability. And even though I might be ignorant of the fact that does not excuse my responsibility. I said this before. If I'm traveling down the road at 60 miles per hour and the speed limit is 45, just because I did not know the speed limit was 45, when that officer pulls me over, he gives me a ticket all the same. He does not say, I'm sorry, try again next time, slow it down. He gives me the ticket and he holds the right to do that. He might be capable of letting me go, just like that judge that's trial that has that 15-year-old in front of him. It's of his discretion whether he wants to trial him as a youth or not. So it's very hard for me. Like I said, I'm stuck in between. To you, Ham.
All right. Well, I don't want to call myself an expert, but I did work with what they call at risk youth, for about 12 years. And I guess my thing is trying juveniles as adults means that the legal system has failed to consider their social and emotional development.
Mm.
And so, a prime example, if you go back to like let's go on the West Coast, all right, because you talked about Virginia. I mean, you talked about New York, but on the West Coast, um, the Gang Violence and Youth Crime Prevention Act from March 2000. This act says that juveniles who are 14 years and over can be tried as adults for any type of violent crime. Now, man, I guess how I feel about this is it really comes down to what is the purpose of the judicial system?
Mm.
Is it punishment? Is it rehabilitation?
Mm.
Is it prevention? Like we give them something that's so bad that nobody else will ever do that again. Like it depends on what the goal is. Me personally, I think that giving a child life is crazy to me, and I hate to use the word crazy because crazy is a dismissive term, but that's crazy to me. What you thinking?
Well, it's Ryan. You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, your point was that the system has failed, right? I can't do that. I can't. It's not the system, bro. It's not the system, right? Because again, it all is connected in some way, somehow. Man, when we were growing up at 15 years old, we didn't just get to do what we wanted to do, right?
Okay.
There was a respect level that our parents required of us. There were responsibilities that we had at 15, right? And we were expected to do that. Part of the new generation is that a lot of parents are friends with their children. Their children are doing things that put their freedom in jeopardy, trying to provide, so on and so forth. 14 nowadays with the world and media and people being exposed to things is not 14 when we were growing up. Totally different day and time. Similar to Corey, I'm torn because you believe in rehabilitation, but the stats are the stats and the facts are the facts. 82% of people that spend some time in jail are likely to go back. 82%. So whether they're charged as a child or an adult, if they end up going to juvie or whatever, 82% of the time they're going to go back. So what do you do with them?
Okay. All right. That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
The question is this though: are you saying that they go back because they have a propensity for violence, or are you saying they have a propensity for crime, or is it that once you get out, your options become more limited?
It's both. It's both, right? I believe. Well, having a father that was worked in correction for 30 years, I've heard personal stories of times where, somebody gets out. It's a strange place. The world changes every day, right? So when they come back out and they put them back into society, it's no different than the way I feel about the military about easing people back into society. When you take somebody that's been locked behind the wall listening to somebody's commands 24 hours a day, and then you put them out there and say, you figure it out, they're going to eventually revert back to the things that they did in the beginning. That makes sense. Like let's use the example you use with gang culture. You get locked up in gang culture. When you get out, that don't mean you out of that gang.
Okay.
And most real gangs, you don't have a choice but to come back to that gang. So it's a cycle based on a decision that was made long before they ever got in trouble with the system, with the judicial system.
Hey, can I break it just for one quick second, Corey?
Okay.
Let's break mode real quick.
Okay.
All right. So I really don't talk about what I used to do with children, but I want you to think like this. We all at one point have sat in a classroom with that one kid in the back that was so bad that he could not come back to class no more. They sent him out. Either he goes to alternative school, and all of a sudden, that one kid disappears, right? And so that kid from your school, that kid from your school, that kid from anybody's school in the comments, I get 50 of them and I put them in one building at a youth academy. All 50 of those bad kids that couldn't sit in the classroom, I take all 50 of them and put them in one building. And by the time that you go after 5.5 months, they all either have got a high school diploma and are going on to higher education, they're going to the military, or they're having meaningful employment. Because that program is about rehabilitation, right?
Mhm.
And so to say that, of course, no program is 100% perfect, but to
Mhm.
say that these human beings need to be thrown in the trash, it's hard for me to say that. And now when I say, okay, the human being is being thrown in the trash, can you imagine the atrocities that when you put a 14, 15, 16-year-old in
Mhm.
there with human beings that we say are too violent to be in society? But you're gonna put
Mhm.
that 14-year-old in the cell with that guy and think that
Mhm.
there's a possibility that he's gonna be anything other than a savage when he gets out.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean,
I I definitely agree with you, Ham. I told you I got to lean on your Joan, and I definitely agree. To your question of depending on the goal of the judicial system, sometimes I think the impact of the individual that's involved. Most of these cases, somebody else they have taken a loss. If you
mhm,
steal something from somebody's store, they lost. If you take somebody's loss, they lost life, they lost. So it's not just the impact of the individual that's a child, but if he has taken something from another individual, I think that impact weighs a lot. Not like when I brought up the speeding ticket. Okay, you ain't hurt nothing but the roads when you were speeding. But if you drink driving, you run somebody over and create manslaughter, you have taken a life. You have taken a father, a son, a brother. Somebody
Correct.
else has lost something
Correct.
and they need justice.
Correct.
So it's more so that's what cannot be removed. Now we saying nobody else was affected but that individual, or even commerce for that matter. Even robbing a store, commerce has been affected. Okay, I understand, but when we talking about you have paralyzed somebody for the rest of their life, that individual needs reconciliation too.
mm,
So that's why I say the goal of the judicial system is sometime to meet what has been taken.
Mhm.
Something has to be paid for that. So
If I could just like, I mean, and I definitely agree with both of y'all points, but I think the biggest issue here is why do we wait till it gets to the judicial system,
mm,
right?
start
When our
small.
kids are very young, we teach our kids that there are consequences for your actions. Correct? Do y'all teach your kids that there's consequences for their actions?
Mm-hmm.
So when a 15, 16, 17 year old does something, there's a consequence for the action they decided to do. Now, again, I do say it's hard to talk about because I do remember when I was 15, right? I do remember when I was 16. I know some of the things that I probably could have easily gotten in trouble for, but grace is sufficient, right? Um, but I just think some things like I explained to court earlier, like my biggest thing is looking at two scenarios. Let's say you got a 21-year-old that gets in the car behind the wheel of a car and they're drunk and they kill somebody. They're tried as an adult automatically. But at 16, you have a license. Teenagers drink. You get behind the wheel and kill somebody, you try them as a child and say, oh, we're going to give them a chance to go back into society. Why? The consequence should be the same for that action. If an action occurs, I think the consequence has to be the same for the action. Because if
Mm-hmm.
not, you're playing you're leaving too much room for there to be, well, I believe in your character, or I believe that you may make a better life of yourself than somebody else, and you could get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different variables that come to crime.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a term called at-risk youth, but I'm gonna tell you, from my experience, a lot of them come from at-risk parents
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
and at-risk situations. And to think, and here goes something else, man. I know. All right, we talk about the parenting aspect of it, right? and and as a parent for myself, they say like, okay, why didn't you intervene? I think that a part of me, if my child is going down a bad path, right, I am going to try my best to continue to get him back on a path. And man, ain't no telling what I'll do to try to keep my child out of the system, and if he does something, there's no way to even quantify. Like, there's no way to quantify. Like, well, why didn't you get the police involved when your son was stealing candy? You knew he was going to be a thief, or this, that, and the third. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to love my child. Like, I'm going to want to try to shield him from those types of things. It's yeah. If I got a good point, it's easier to repair broken children than broken men, man. I mean, but
I think that's a good bridge towards the next topic about hurt people hurt people. You know what I'm saying? Hurt people hurt people. When you got that's like bullying is becoming a problem. You know what I'm saying? Most of these kids are becoming who they are because they have been hurt. Whether that's hurt by the parents or hurt by the uncle in the family or whatever. I mean, hurt people do hurt things. And that has to give us the ability to see these individuals as children. I mean, that cannot be removed because some people can look at a 15-year-old and see them as much more, especially when, I mean, children these days starting to look older and older as they grow up in their youth, but they still mental wise are children. They are kids. So I relay this again. I am torn in this thing. I need help. I need help with this thing and more perspective.
I
You
tell
know?
you what, Corey. So I think about this. Like, if we're going to go with the development and the brain development, right, of an adolescent, should that same grace be extended to a man? Because men develop later.
Mm-hmm.
So do we take that same approach with an adult male because their mind is mature later? Your mind, the right from wrong is not a complex mind thought process. What you see typically in a teenager is the lack the ability or the lack of the ability to control impulse.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the cognitive ability to think further than that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Is like, I got to do this, and that's just it. There's no, well, what happens if I do this, right? Because as adults, a lot of times before we make a decision, we analyze what are the things that could possibly happen from this. Um, the bullying again hurt people, and that's a great caveat because I think as a parent, you do want to take, man, don't let nobody mess with you.
Mm-hmm.
But at what is there a line to that? Is it you never start anything, you finish it, right? But influence in the world that we know nowadays, nobody's comfortable standing on their own no more. Bullying is a we and to be fair, we've all been on both sides of that. If we're honest, we've been a part of the crowd that did some bullying to people. And we've also been a part of the crowd that may have been bullied about some things that we couldn't control. But nowadays, I believe that the reason that bullying is becoming a problem is because the first thing people are doing is pulling out their phones.
That's a key thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, hemp. If I may, I do have a point of interest to say. I'm just gonna state this very quick because I do like when you say you never start anything, but I do want to bring up the fact that we're asking a child to make this judgment when some adults can't.
Mm-hmm.
Some adults don't understand what they had impacted in this argument. So two individuals can get to arguing and feel like maybe they didn't start it,
Mm-hmm.
maybe felt like, but they do not understand the way they impacted the situation. They don't want to take responsibility to what they did to push this situation to be there.
Correct.
So you have two individuals that do not understand each other, so they hurt each other. And that's a quick point. It's on you, Ham.
Yeah.
I think so. I hadn't even thought about until something you just said about the whole thing about the phones.
Yeah.
Like,
Social
cause
media.
it's like I heard Charles White say something about somebody pulling the phones out. He said, "You're trying to cause me irreparable harm." You're trying to cause me. You're trying to cause the type of embarrassment that I will never be able to run away from.
Yeah.
Like you know, and then now we live in a world with a like quotient. People gotta like you. You know, and and this is something that will follow you because nobody even knows how long something lasts on the internet. So you're right. Like that is a different variable. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
That is a different variable. The next variable is, I think that with bullying, I think a lot of times with bullying and children that don't follow the path that we want them to follow is the fact that there's usually an education issue or like what they call it in the school system is an IEP, an individual education plan, or something along that nature. Like because whether it's educational, whether it's cognitive, whether it's emotional, whatever it is, it's saying that they don't operate at the same caliber as every single one else, and they probably need to be in smaller groups. But now when you put all of these people and you put this melting pot of educational issues, emotional issues, socioeconomic issues, you put them all in the classroom, and you got the kid that doesn't understand, the kid that's hungry, the kid that doesn't have clean underwear on, the kid that smells bad. You have all these different types of variables in there, and somebody's gonna get picked on. Somebody's gonna get picked on, and that's my take.
So I would dare say that college is the same way, bro.
Okay.
It's literally the same way in the college classroom, and it's more people from a bigger melting pot that know even less about each other, but you don't have that same issue.
But you also have the education. Do you have the learning disabilities that you would have?
I want you to think about this. If you're sitting in the classroom and you're surrounded by your peers, and because you act out a little differently, they take you and they separate you and they put you in the IEP.
Okay.
That's embarrassing.
All right.
Right? Because now what the school has done is, I can't handle you. We got to move you somewhere else. Right? When in reality, a lot of times what has happened is, and I go back to this because I really strongly feel this way, bro. I think the root issue of this is the parents.
Okay.
Bullying survives because kids, think about it. That young girl that Corey sent that video about committed suicide the day after she was jumped at school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Why wasn't she comfortable enough to talk to her parents?
Mm-hmm. So
are your parents too busy? Do they work all the time? When they're home, are they constantly on their phone and really never engaging and paying attention to you in conversation? The kids don't feel comfortable talking to their parents. We see this cycle of kids committing suicide all the time, and the parents say, "I had no idea." Were you paying attention?
I got a question for you, son.
Mm-hmm.
You sit in a classroom, right?
Yep.
And you don't understand what's going on. You don't understand the work, right?
Yep.
You're terrified about somebody calling on you. You're terrified. Say you can't read. You don't want to be the one to read. You don't want to be. You're terrified about that.
Yep.
But you do got an option. The option is I can say something funny. Right? I can be the guy. I can either be known as the idiot, or I can be the funny guy here. You know, more than likely, if you have an underdeveloped mind, which one would you choose?
That's great.
So peep game, and this is no lie. And anybody that knows me will tell you this is a fact. When we grew up, it wasn't cool to be smart. So it wasn't that I had any learning. I was a very intelligent person. Every teacher parent conference that my parents had, they said the same thing. He's so smart, but he wants everybody to laugh. Why? Why was that so important to me in 7th grade? I don't know. I can't tell you, and I don't remember that far back. But I was more worried about impressing people than standing out amongst the crowd. And then as you get older, you're like, well, I don't want to be like nobody. Like, for some reason, man, is it a disrespect thing that the teachers feel when somebody's trying to be funny? is it a I don't have time for this because they're overwhelmed type deal? Um, yeah, it's so many layers, bro. It's like an onion. It's like an onion because imagine if instead of a kid being written off and sent somewhere, if there were certain programs, my daughter's elementary school, those kids have counseling one time a week. Every kid has a session with a counselor in school every week to talk about different things that they go through. We knew a guidance counselor was there, but did you know what a guidance counselor did when you were in school? Outside of post up college ribbons?
No.
Yeah. Like there's no guidance. There's no
Well,
guidance.
I would agree that. Let's move on to the halftime comments. I like one of these comments that Tip posted that some people commit crimes for survival, and I would agree, but it's an aspect of this. I think it's something that cannot be moved on. We spoke on it about people morality and talked about that situation, but I believe morality is always subjective. And I believe anybody that does evil will always try to find a way to justify. That person that robs from another to feed their self, they still taking from another individual that might be starving. We don't know. We try to justify the crimes that we do. But at the end of the day, that's the reason why I say morality is subjective. If you don't think the person that rapes finds a way to justify, the person that murders finds the way to justify, everything is justifiable in the eyes of a person that think he's right. At the end of the day, I ain't never seen nobody in a fight to say, "Hey, I'm wrong." They fighting because they believe they're right. People will justify their wrongs at all time. It ain't until you further reflect on that you learn that I was wrong. So yeah, I mean, some people commit crimes for survival, but you still got to. That's the reason why we can't just let people just go on killing to survive. That's anarchy. That's crazy times. But
I will. I think to me that comment about survival is more not necessarily murder. I'm thinking about providing, right? Being able to put food on the table, stealing food, like that kind of stuff. Which I agree with that. I think a lot of it does. Let's use our favorite word. It a lot of it draws back to socioeconomic status,
mhm,
where you line up in this capitalistic structure, right? What you have access to.
mhm,
But then the biggest other piece of that is how much pride are you willing to let go?
mhm.
Because there's a lot of programs out here, and there's a lot of people willing to help, but you can't help anybody if they don't tell you.
But along them same lines, you got to think about the fact of some people do commit crimes. Let's say you look at an individual that's in gang wars. He
Mm-hmm.
could say, "I killed the survives." You know what I'm saying? Because I'm here. But everybody is doing that, and that's the reason why it's keep perpetuating. It's going to keep the cycle will continue, and then we just have body bags. But how do we change that? It takes an individual to say no. It takes an individual to rise up to say that I'm going to be above this. And I know that's a hard ask. I don't want to remove the difficulty of that. Definitely, it's definitely serves, but it definitely is hard. But sometimes we got to be principled. I talked about that today. I believe myself to be a man of principles, and I try to live by those principles. Sometimes that is I move off of those, but let's not move the bar. One of the scriptures say, I don't want to get into scripture, but it does say we press towards the mark. We don't change that mark because that mark is Christ. That mark is something high above us. We don't try to lower that bar to say, okay, you're satisfied with being here. Let's put the bar there and say, okay, I failed. I didn't meet that. But let's not bring the bar down to try to make it okay.
That's a difficult one for me because the one, and that's a true statement, but there's one skewed part of that, right? Which I mention this all the time. Everybody's process is different.
Mhm.
So where your bar is, somebody might not even be close to where you at right now.
Yeah, that's the reason why I said
So
morality is subjective.
it's
It's
subjective, correct? Which is why you have to, right, Tiffany, perfect. Stealing isn't right, but I can see why. Right.
oh
I give you an example. And I will hope that this is the case with us three as fathers. If we had kids and our babies needed to eat,
yeah.
and we had no other option. We have exhausted all of our resources, but my baby is on the cusp of being out of this world if I don't feed them. That's desperation. And when you're desperate, you do things out of desperation. You have to find a way out of desperation. Does it make it right? No. But at this present moment, I am willing to deal with the consequence of my desperation to take care of a need that I have. It's no different than a drug addict stealing from their parents or killing their parents or whatever to get that high. It's no different than somebody needing to put diapers on their baby. We see these stories with people taking milk out of the grocery store, right? Like, and again, somebody like me, if I see somebody getting in trouble at a grocery store for stealing some milk, I'm gonna say, "Hey, sir, can I just give y'all the $5 for this milk? Let that man go." Right? Like, it is subjective. Morality is subjective, but I think grace is missing with that, bro. It is.
I talked enough. I got to give the brother Hamp.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say that's for my closing arguments.
Oh
It's
man,
on you,
what's
Hamp.
up? What's up, Ricky? Man, I
Yes,
ain't
sir.
seen Ricky in forever. What's happening, brother? Hey, but this is how I feel about it, right? And it's probably a little bit unorthodox. My question is, man, like the thought process of giving a human being time as if his life don't matter. Like, I mean, I have sat in courtrooms for various reasons, not for myself, but usually for other people, and just listening to the different cases that come before, and listen to a man give another man 20 something years as if like that's something to do, like 20 something years in a cage.
So what you want to get rid of the
What did he
judge?
do?
It doesn't
Okay.
matter what he did. I mean, just the thought process of it.
So no
So
charge
so
is worth
so, so
20 years.
I'm not saying that. So this is what I'm saying to you, right? So in my mind, what I think about when I hear another man getting this type of time, right? You getting this type of time, and then I start thinking about, I could imagine, what if that person was a kid, and like all over America, there's children that get time, they get double digit numbers when they haven't lived double digit years. And so when it really comes down to it, of course the question is, what is the purpose of the judicial system? Like, and I think that if we require our if we require, transparency, and ask, what are we trying to accomplish here? I think it would turn our stomachs if they gave us the real answer.
Mm.
I think is I oh man, that's heavy.
Yeah, I
But the
mean, like,
point
what
of
are
the
we trying to do?
judicial
What
system
what are we trying to do?
is law and order, bro.
Okay, so
Because
law, order.
can you imagine if we really took things into our own, if somebody murdered a family member of yours
Mhm.
and you knew that there was no consequence for them murdering a family member of yours, and you're not going to get in trouble for retaliating on the murder, it is a worse cycle. Would you rather somebody be stoned to death?
See, and that's what I'm saying. This the biggest difference between stoning a man to death and putting him in prison for the rest of his life is the fact that out of mind, out of sight. We don't want to deal with the brutality of saying, I sentenced this man to be beaten to death, and I have to watch him. You know what I mean? So now we'll throw him in. And listen, man, there are heinous crimes. There are heinous
Mhm.
crimes that, man, that person probably shouldn't be outside. He probably should never be outside. This person is a threat to society. He too much.
Mhm.
But I'm gonna tell you, man, there's a lot of people that do drugs that end up behind those cages for a long time.
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of people that, like Tiff said, were just trying to survive, like stealing, like just simple things of that nature. That probably, like, if you really ask yourself, what are we trying to do here? There's too many people with bags of marijuana sitting in prison. This just it don't make sense. That's legal now.
Yeah, I think that that's a different argument.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
that's the legality piece of it, right? Like, my personal feeling is there's not a person in the world, in the United States of America, that should be sitting behind a wall for bags of weed. I don't believe that. I don't think that we should waste the taxpayer dollars and resources on charging people for having weed, right? So I mean, I think we all know that there's pros and cons to the judicial system, right? Just like we all know that there's pros and cons to pretty much everything in life. But what is like you asked something on a couple episodes ago? What is a better option?
What is the better option?
Hmm. I think I definitely would agree. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because we have parts of the judicial system that might be broken, we don't say that the judicial system in itself is wrong. Because at the end of the day, we what do? Chaos. What's the alternative? So that's an interesting thing to jump into this school to prison pipeline. And what I mean by that is if you take these individuals that 15, 16, 17 year olds and you keep taking them out of school, you just cycling them to prison and things of that nature, like Hamp was talking about, you keep putting them in these situations where they can't flourish and they destined for prison. So the question I want to propose to you, and the question I probably didn't had to ask you, Hamp, tonight is, okay, if you do you keep these individuals that's hard to deal with in school for the sake of being in school with the other good hard-working students and force them to endure those children just for the sake of one individual? We sacrifice the potential of many. So
Okay.
I don't know, so I'm asking you.
Here goes the answer to the question is, it depends on whether it's your kid or not,
Mm,
right? Because nobody wants to go to that difficult truth. The
mhm,
difficult truth is, if it's your kid, you definitely don't want him thrown out with the bathwater,
mhm,
right? You definitely want the type of leniency, and,
mhm,
and so the answer to it is, if you treat them all as if they're your children, then we don't even have to have this debate about what do
Mhm.
you do with them.
mhm,
But like Todd said earlier in the thing, you need more programs. Like the problem with those programs are they're extremely expensive. And to be honest with you, the efficacy, I, I would say, at this point, at 15 to 18, you have dismissed those resources at the critical points. And this is a Hail Mary. This is a Jalen Hurts Hail Mary by the time, you start putting money in the programs at 15. Like
Mhm.
it's like the last play of the Super Bowl. Like it's not a good outlook to run this at 15, 18. Now, again, we find money for everything. We have money for everything, but we just don't have the money to not have 30 kids in a student. I mean, 30 kids with one teacher in a classroom. Like, we can't find money for that. But I'm going to tell you one thing I have noticed, though. Sometimes they do find money in. When you actually move from one school district to the next, it seems like they found a way to have less students in a classroom. It's almost magic. Now I'm not gonna say exactly how this magic works because I'm not sure. But it depends on the school district that you have your kid in. And that's another topic for another day when we talk about do
Correct.
you pull your kids out? Do you move
Correct.
them? Do you do this? Do you
Correct.
do that? But the truth of the matter is, it's all about distribution of wealth and distribution of resources because the resources are finite. They're not infinite. We all know that, and it's just whether or not we're going to divide them evenly.
mhm,
And
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
and again, when I talk about dividing these resources evenly, people use the S word. I'm not gonna say nobody specifically here, but I get used with the S word when we talk about dividing resources evenly. Um, but that is the biggest drawback when you talk about capitalism. Everybody get as much as they can get. You know what I mean? Because resources are not infinite. Like there's a certain amount of everything, and you need to spread it evenly, or at least try to.
mhm,
So if I could, I would like to answer the question, Corey, that you asked.
mhm,
Um, Hamp, I agree to a certain extent. Yeah, definitely. If my kid was the problem child, I would want somebody to have that patience. But if it wasn't my kid, I also would really not want them to have that distraction, right? But here is another piece that we're missing, and I think that this is something. I'm going back to my same point. A troubled kid, likely comes from a troubled home.
mhm,
Sometimes school is the only safe place they have.
mhm,
It's the only place they eat. So if you kick them out of school, you are forcing them into the prison pipeline.
Thank you.
You're forcing them into the prison pipeline
It's the
because
only. It's the
their
only
situation now.
structure.
Correct. It's the only structure that some of these kids really have, dude.
And
Like,
I'm going to tell you
and
something.
kicking them out, you're setting them up to be people on the street.
Mhm.
People on the street get bored. When you get bored, you do dumb stuff. That's so it's so school has to have a more, like, they do have to have more resources. But like you said, like different school districts, of course, which we'll get into that, because I'm seeing a big change out here in Georgia, bro. Like, it's some schools out here that look like NCAA stadiums inside their basketball stadiums, and there's some schools out here that you can just tell from the time, bro. I thought that we lived near the Compton Clovers a couple weeks ago based on TikTok. Like, it's different. But like, to write the, like, I just feel like the lack of patience that we have, or that how quick that these schools are to label a troubled child. They label a troubled child without really knowing the whole backstory. When some of these kids literally come to school just for that sense of security, man, that safety.
Hey, listen, man, that's the biggest thing that I would say, like, that program offered. You take a kid out of his environment, and the biggest thing that you offer them is discipline and structure.
And structure. Yep.
Discipline and structure, because people will meet if you set a standard. Typically, people will meet it. And you know what the crazy thing you can do? You can take the worst behaved kid, and if you want that kid to behave, the only thing you have to do is give him responsibility.
That's
Put
it.
him in, put him in charge of something,
Yep.
and give him something. Like, stop telling him how bad he suck at something, and tell him that he's good at something. And then all of a sudden, he's not as bad as you think he is. Like, because the fact of the matter is, nobody, like I said, nobody wants to be the one that sits in the classroom that's constantly in fear of being called because they don't know the answer. Like, nobody wants to be that. And
Dude.
so, again, and even when you said about, you say you kick a kid out of school, a bad kid will know. You kick a good kid out of school. You see good kids, they cut up in the summertime when they don't have the structure of something
Correct.
to do. Even
Correct.
no matter how good your angel is, they get on your nerves if ain't no
Yep.
structure in your house in the summertime.
And man, and again, it goes back to my, and I'm going back to it because I'm hounding on this, bro. An unequipped parent creates an unequipped child. An unequipped parent creates an unequipped child. So if a parent doesn't know how to manage their child's behavior, they send them to school and then expect the school to be able to be the structure that they need. But it's a balance, it's a scale. Schools need parents to be involved. Parents need schools to be involved. When you got one or the other, it'll never work. I think I saw in here, oh, Tiffany said, I'm not a fan of education, but I also know not to rely on schools to educate. Bingo. People rely on schools to teach their kids life skills. Can't do that. Teaching goes so much further than the classroom. It doesn't stop as a parent. School is not a daycare, which a lot of people really do use school as a daycare. There are some parents that have never sat down with their kids to go over homework. There's some parents that never look at their kids' report card or never ask about it for whatever various reasons that they may have going on in their life. But there are kids who are being born to unequipped parents. I'm not saying that you're a bad parent because you're unequipped, but everybody has a different skill set that they're good at and some that they're still working on. But if your toolbox isn't there, you have to have enough, you have to let go of your pride enough to say, hey, my toolbox ain't there, and find somebody that can help you with that. But kicking these kids out of school, and like, I would love to see what the statistics are on how many kids go to like CSEP, how many of them actually stay through that program. I think, and I can't use his name, but we all know a young kid who is doing a lot better than most of us who was a product of those programs. And I think it took for him to see that program. Like, it couldn't be beneficial because for him, his entire life changed by watching exactly what he did not want to be. But that's a very rare example, man. It's a very rare example.
All right, that's an interesting segue into this social disparities and underage youth. 'Cause like you say, I mean, of course you can it's easy to say that parents are all that thing. But 95% of these kids that are 15, 16, 17, they come from Black and Latino families. At the end of the day, we understand that it's a lot easier when you got two parents in the household. But a lot of these people, it's one mother that's working two jobs. What more can be on her plate? She's trying her best to take care of these two kids and also trying to go to school at the same time to provide a better life. Are we gonna say that she's a bad parent because the child is not living up to standards? She's trying her best. Sometimes they need a little help. And I know it's easy to say you put yourself in this predicament. I'm one of the people that I don't like to remove responsibility, but at the same time, I don't want to remove empathy. I do feel for those people that's struggling to do these things, and these kids are getting pushed by the wayside. But my point will always be the hardest thing about measuring these social disparities is I'm a fan of equality. I'm a fan of fairness, but I do not believe in equality of outcome. I think all cultures are different, all behaviors are different. I don't think you can measure things by simple statistics or simply want to say, okay, this number is bad because it's it's disproportionately affecting this group over this group because you can make those arguments all the time. Yeah.
Okay. So, all
So
right.
real quick before you do it, let me make sure I make this clear. So Corey, to say I'm not making it an example to say that that you're a bad parent, right?
Okay.
Which is why I said unequipped, right?
Oh,
You can
I'm
be a
sorry.
great parent and
I
be
apologize.
unequipped. Yeah,
I withdraw my
let's be
contention.
clear.
I misquoted you. I
Yeah,
apologize. I
no, not
apologize.
bad parents because parents are doing the best they
Yeah.
could. We don't have a manual on this,
Yeah.
you
Sometimes we
know.
need clarity, and I
Correct.
got clarity.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So back to what to answer your question and piggyback off of what Todd said about schools in India, 9,000 per student. All right. So that number there that you see, you got to remember that a teacher in America makes a lot more than a teacher in India. That cost that you see per
Indiana.
student in Indiana, that cost that you see per student has a lot to do with staff sizing and all that.
Mhm.
Those resources don't always directly correlate to the quality of education that human being is getting. A lot of times it's how much overhead is there. You know,
Mhm.
do we have
Yeah.
three assistant principals? Like, do we
Mm-hmm.
have, you know what I mean? Like, those
Mhm.
type of things
Mm-hmm.
play a part. Um, as far as the disparities in underage use, I've told you before, man, uh, I I think that most things are socioeconomic. I'm gonna say it all the time on
Yeah,
this
I would agree with
podcast,
that.
right? And so when people
And
talk about,
culture too. Now, culture cannot be removed. Culture,
man,
Big part.
cultural
Big
impact,
part.
okay,
big
all
part.
right. Well, even if you want to say culture, I'm going to say that those
Mhm.
people that make the majority of the population in prison, they do not have any control over media. They don't
Mhm.
own media companies. They don't own anything that directly shows what the culture is. So,
Mhm.
like, so if anything, they're being manipulated. If you say it's
Yeah, I
culture,
would agree with that. I would.
it's a manipulation
We're
of
right there.
culture.
It's a
If that's what you want
manipulation
to
of
say,
culture. I would agree with that. We
yeah,
we
yeah,
we're right
exactly.
there at it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because those people that are the majority of the prisons, they do not own radio companies, they don't own cable companies, they don't own
Mhm.
anything. The culture that they have is the culture that someone says that's the culture they should have. So again, I do believe that most of these things are like that. Also, when it comes down to, like, you make up a very interesting point, man. It's really it's I would say it's easier to be a parent when you don't have to work all the time,
Mhm.
Correct.
when you don't have to pull
Yeah.
two shifts,
Correct.
when you don't have to do the things just to keep your head above water. I'll say that I think it's easier that way. And I have a hard time, like, I have a hard time judging. Um, I'm not gonna say that every time a kid is bad is because bad parents, or
Mm.
because of good. Or every time a kid is good is because of good parents. I'm
Correct.
not even gonna say that.
I think
Um,
good parents have bad kids.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of times when it comes to resources, and I'm gonna tell you, here goes one thing that I've learned it now that I'm in real estate. Right, what ends up happening is with these schools, expensive houses raise tax dollars. Tax dollars go into school systems. School systems with the most tax dollars have the better paid staff, have the newer facilities, have the bigger classrooms,
Mhm.
and then the system it just constantly just turns over and over and over again. And the sad thing is, in school systems where, let's just say, if I am there and I finally get me a good job and I can make more money, the question comes: do I stay where I'm at? Do I stay where I was planted and flourish there, or do I move over to wherever the resources are? And that's another, like, that's a conversation that I would love for us to get into at some point. Um, what do you do?
Social disparities, man. I think, like, Corey, the point, or whichever one of you all just made that point. I mean, you do have good parents and kids that are raised in upper echelon neighborhoods, that turn out to be horrible human beings, right? It's soul matters. It soul matters where your soul is, because at some point there is, regardless of parents, there's decisions that you have to make in your life. We've seen examples like the affluenza kid. We've seen other examples where I know a lot of young black children that didn't have the best life growing up that turned out to be phenomenal people, right? But I think the attention of it all is where the social disparity comes from, because I literally had a conversation tonight that is a shame that we're at a point where you have to choose, or people are really trying to decide between time and money, between providing and being there. Those shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to choose between the two, because time ain't replaceable. Money is. So what it comes down to is educating yourself. Again, like I said, it all ties together. Educating yourself on money management, on this, like, go show up. You, in order for you to know what the school is doing with the money, you got to go to the school board meetings. In order for you to know what's going on in the school system, you have to show up to parent teacher conference. In order for you to know what's going on, where this money is going on, you need to start doing research. The schools, some of these low income schools, need better technology, right? Some schools let their kids take laptops home. Other ones, they don't even get laptops. In that case, if we want to try to start a socialism movement, education should be the first place it starts. Make that even across the board, and then let's see what we get.
Yes, yes, yes. So you have
Oh man, no, it's not on me, man, because we in that time where it's time to close this bad boy out, man.
that's the
First
reason why I
up,
passed it over.
hey, it's on you, Ryan. What you got, bro?
Man, look, every day just work to get better. We are not going to ever figure it all out. As long as you keep trying, doing your best, you're doing just fine. That's all I got.
All
What
right.
you got, Corey?
Towards me, I do want to close by answering the question. It's a question that I can't answer because it's a specific question towards my opinion. Tiff said, how do I measure equality? So, like I said, I do not believe in equality of outcome, but I do believe in the equality of opportunity. My goal is you can measure how often a person it has the opportunity to do something. So where I would measure it, let's say I held a job between men and women. If women voices their opinion that they did not have the opportunity to apply for that job, then I fix that. But I cannot measure it by saying, okay, maybe these women didn't want that job. I have to look at it from that way. So I look at it equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome. Just because 95% of bricklayers are men, women might not want to be bricklayers. And that's how I do it. All right.
I'm going to say again. I've seen some new faces in here, and I'm excited about it. That's thank you. That's all I can say. That thank you, man. And it warmed my heart to see Ricky Taylor. I ain't seen Ricky Taylor in a long time. Let me tell you, man. This episode is brought to you guys by Ricky Taylor. When I was, I think, 13 years old, I played in a rec league championship, and Ricky Taylor hit a game winning shot after I hit a game winning shot, and it changed the trajectory of my life. So if I, if it
That's
wasn't
why
for
you're
Ricky
not
Taylor,
the NBA. That's why
that's
you're
why
not
I'm
the
not in.
NBA. I
Ricky
got
Taylor's
you.
the reason why I'm not in the
That
NBA.
makes sense, bro.
He,
Yeah,
he
that
took my
makes sense.
game winner and hit his game winner, and yeah, and here we are here. So thank you, Ricky Taylor. Um, man, thank you again. I say every time that you guys rock with us, it gives us an opportunity to get better. I'm really loving us getting into these thoughtful, in-depth thoughts. Please, if you got something that you want to talk about, or you want to hear about, or you want to get in the comment section about, when you close out of this, open up the comment section, put it in there. Like, and if we can do it, we're gonna do it. So please, like, support us. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button underneath the video. I appreciate you guys, and the way that we close out, like always, hey, love yours, no matter what it is. We out.